Hi, my name is Ayub and I'll be presenting our paper Online Learning of Objects Through Curiosity-Driven Active Learning. So children learn through curiosity. They ask about the things or the concept they are most unfamiliar with. And the whole process is extremely efficient because the child only has to ask about the things that he or she unfamiliar with, and the teacher doesn't have to answer any unnecessary questions. Further, children and even all humans learn in a continual manner. That is, they continually adapt to their environment by learning new things without forgetting any of the previously learned information. Now, with robots becoming an integral part of our society, like household or domestic robots, they must also learn through curiosity, because in real-world applications they might not have enough human assistance, so they should prioritize the things that they are most unfamiliar with. Deep learning has achieved remarkable success in object classification. However, they require a large amount of training data to be labeled. But in real-world robotics applications, that's not the case because of limited human assistance and limited label data. So for that case, researchers have proposed active learning techniques in deep learning, which actually use uncertainty sampling to find most informative samples among the unlabeled data. However, these techniques still are applicable for batch learning scenarios. That is, they require all the training data to be available in a single batch, and they cannot be applied for continual learning. So in the past couple of years, deep learning researchers have focused on incremental learning, in which the model gets data in incremental steps, and it is supposed to perform well on previous data and new data. However, this runs into a new problem called catastrophic forgetting, in which the model actually forgets the previously learned information and the overall classification accuracy of the model decreases. So to deal with catastrophic forgetting, many researchers have proposed continual learning techniques, but most of these techniques still require a portion of the old class data, which again is not memory efficient for real-world applications. Most of these techniques require a large number of training samples per class. Further, they also require all the training sample of a class in a single increment, which might not be the case in real-world scenarios when the data might be coming in a streaming manner and samples for the same class can be coming in different increments. And lastly, these techniques are not suitable for uncertainty-based active learning. So in this paper, we deal with a combination of these problems, which is curiosity-driven online learning, in which the model gets streaming data which is completely unlabeled, and it is supposed to find the most informative samples to get the labels off. And the entire process that we present is a self-supervised system for finding the curiosity scores for different samples. So for the continual learning part of our system, we use CBCL-PR, which is centroid-based concept learning with pseudo rehearsal as a technique that has been shown to work with fewer examples per class and producing state-of-the-art results on different benchmarks. In this technique, the model actually gets the samples of each class in an incremental manner, and it gets the centroids and covariances of that class using a distance threshold as a hyperparameter. Next, for the pseudo rehearsal phase, the model actually uses the centroids and covariance matrices of the previous classes and sample them in a form of a Gaussian distribution to get pseudo exemplars, and then combines the pseudo exemplars with the new feature vectors and train a shallow classifier composed of a linear layer based on a cross entropy loss. And then the shallow classifier is used for getting the labels of test images. So CBCL-PR was originally proposed for continual learning. However, for the online learning scenario, data for the same class can come in different increments. So we present an update to CBCL-PR to deal with online learning. So in this case, when the data for a previous class does come, the model actually updates the previously learned centroids, again using the clustering process, using the distance threshold. And to update the covariance matrices of the previous classes using the new data, it actually finds the covariance of the new data from the newly updated centroids and gets a weighted mean of the previous covariances and the new covariances to get the overall covariance matrix for the previous class. So we're finding the curiosity scores for any new object. We actually present a self-supervised system in which the model actually uses the previously learned centroid by CBCL-PR. So assume the model gets actually m unlabeled objects, and it has to get the label of k less or equal to m objects. And each object actually has multiple images taken from different views. So our curiosity term is actually composed of two terms. One is the average distance of each image of an object from the closest centroids of the previous classes, which shows that if the images are actually farther apart from a previous centroid, that image or that object should be unknown or should have a higher curiosity score. A second term is actually the normalized number of images that belong to the most predicted class among the centroids. So that actually shows that if the most number of images are actually not predicted to a particular class, that means it should have a higher curiosity score, because images of an object, even if taken from different views, should belong to a same class if it is previously known by the system. So to test our approach, we perform one experiment on Core 50 dataset, which was proposed for testing continual learning for robotics applications. The dataset consists of 10 classes with 5 object instances per class, and the dataset also has 11 sessions taken in different environments, with 3, 7, and 10th session for testing, and the others used for training. We use PyTorch to implement all the neural network models, and use ResNet 18 pre-trained on ImageNet as the feature extractor for CBCL-PR, and the hyperparameter distance threshold for CBCL-PR was tuned using cross-validation. So among the 8 training sessions, we combined them into 400 training instances, and in each increment, we sampled 5 instances randomly from the 400 training instances. And the robot or the model is required to get the label of one of the objects. Since there are no techniques for curiosity-driven online learning, so we actually use the CBCL-PR as the online learning algorithm, and then test with our curiosity-based approach against the softmax-based uncertainty sampling and the random sampling technique. And for the test phase, we actually use a full test set with all the classes to test how well the model has learned all of the classes in each increment. And we only test for 50 increments instead of 400 increments, because after 50 increments, the model has learned pretty much all the classes, and the performance for all the approaches start to look pretty similar. So we tested in terms of 2 measures. One is the accuracy of the system in each increment, and the total number of classes learned by the system in each increment. We also perform 10 runs of the experiment and with random seeds, and take the average and standard deviation. And as you can see, on the left is the accuracy, and on the right is the number of classes learned by each model. And our model, curiosity-driven online learning, in red, actually performs better than the softmax-based and random sampling. In particular, you can also see that the softmax-based sampling or random sampling have a large standard deviation, which also shows that these techniques are dependent upon the order of the classes presented to the system or the objects presented to the system, but our approach actually is not dependent upon that, which means it is quite robust in real-world scenarios. So to summarize, in this paper we have tackled a novel problem, which is curiosity-driven online learning, and proposed a novel approach to tackle that problem. As a limitation, there was one limitation for our approach, in which we assumed that correct labels would be provided by the human, but in the real-world cases, there are scenarios when the labels can be deceptive or wrong. Nonetheless, our paper still contributes in many different ways. Like I said, the curiosity-driven learning is necessary for real-world scenarios with limited human assistance, and online learning of objects is also necessary to adapt to real-world dynamic scenarios. And lastly, we present quantitative evaluations of our approach and the problem on a benchmark dataset, so which can be used by future systems to compare against our approach. And lastly, for our future work, we will apply our approach on a real robot that is wandering around in our environment to learn about different objects through limited human assistance. Thank you.